Minnesota. It's going to go to Katie Wanaz. Katie Wanaz, the winner for tonight's blanket. Now joining us up on the roof is Katie Hen from St. Louis Park, many of her fellow students. You've got a big event coming up on February 23rd. Tell us about it.
It's called Filling the Gap. It's about our community service program. We do a little mentoring with the big buddies and little buddies with the surrounding elementary schools. It's $45. It's at Austin Steakhouse. We're having a silent auction, and we're hopefully getting some help from this guy over here.
And Don, what are you going to be doing at this fundraiser?
I'm going to help MC the whole program, and the entire concept is about putting children first, and these people are mentors. And they help the same way adults do, the older adults, in helping with the young people their age. They help the people further down the road. We've got a lot of mentors we're going to be celebrating.
And this is a program you truly believe in.
Absolutely right.
Do a lot of work. Well, that's great. Again, this is February 23rd, Austin Steakhouse. You've got the number right there if you'd like ticket information, 542-8822. And I'll bet if you buy your tickets, Don will bring enough photos and sign one personally to all those who attend.
Oh, what a deal.
Right, Don? Maybe I'll be signing them for him.
Thanks, Rebecca.
for kids. And families with grown children let neighborhood kids use their basketball hoops.
So the community got together and said, if we had a dream for what would be done for kids in our community, what would it look like? And they agreed that it wouldn't be a program, but it would be a philosophy. And that rather than expecting our schools and our families who are stressed to the hilt being responsible for this, the whole community would be part of that. It comes down to those simple actions that don't cost really any money.
Such as a mentoring program between high school and elementary kids.
All right, you want to go first?
Fifth grader Pat Townsend is getting someone to rely on, and Neil Hall is building a relationship with a younger child.
He's nice. He's very kind. I always look forward to the Tuesdays.
That makes me feel pretty special.
And Neil has his own mentor, local businessman Grant Harlow.
I think there's a lot of opportunities out there. You just can't sit and wait for them, I think. You need to get involved and kind of weave this fabric of integration between the generations and do what you can to try to make it better.
If you know what's needed and you see it isn't happening, you don't just throw up your hands, you roll up your sleeves. The Osgood File. Charles Osgood on the CBS Radio Network.
I said, Mother, I don't even know where it is. She said, they wouldn't have told me you did it if you didn't do it. And she didn't even have a telephone. Now, how could that happen? When I sold my house after I retired and moved in a condo, I couldn't even tell you the name of the fellow who lived 2 doors down, not alone his children. What have we done in this great society? So anyway, we put all this stuff together, and then Marion continues. I have to tell one last one about her. This is so powerful. I wish we have learned, I wish all of us have learned, that we live here, we pay rent for being here, and it's the very purpose of life, serving other people. And so I shared all of this stuff with the committee, and they did a marvelous job. And if I had more time, if Karen would be kind enough and the others, which they're not, to give me more time so I could tell the truth. Well, anyway, they did a wonderful job. And they came up with this thing called Children First. Because they came up with this African proverb that it takes a whole village to raise a child. And the mission they set out to say is to build a community which puts children first in order to create a better tomorrow for everybody. And where I showed this to whomever I showed it, everybody got excited about it. And it just, doesn't it feel good? But what do you do with it? That was the problem. So I was back and I started thinking, my God, we're back at the same place I was with that children, or the changing learner. This is wonderful stuff, but we don't know what to do. And then I remembered, I knew Peter because his wife worked in our school district. I called Peter up and I said, come on out, and I want to share this stuff with you. And I had Wayne and Gil in, and I said, Wayne and Gil, you guys want to spend your money? Why don't we hire Peter to go and find us a program? And that's why many of you are here. I heard you. I've been in enough sessions to find something that would do this. And so they each wrote a check larger than I've ever written in my life and hired Peter to go and find us a program. And 3 months later, he came back and in front of my friends said, there is no program. There is no program like what you're looking for. I said, Peter, these are my good friends. You've spent their money, and in front of me you're saying you have nothing? He said, there is nothing. Well, by that time, people in the community were really excited, and one of the first ones was the city. The city passed this resolution, and they faxed it to me, and they endorsed a model demonstration program called Children First, and I said, what is it? Well, it must be good because everybody's excited about it. And so being a very good superintendent, at least, Don, you could clap. You're an old superintendent. I went to the school board and we adopted the same resolution. I said, well, if they think it must be good, it must be good. But the point of that whole story is what happened. We had a partner. So the question I was given, how did the partnership start? It started that simply. But now we had a partnership between the city and the school district and the Boy Scouts and the Girl Scouts and all. This box is simply a demonstration of that's the Children First box. And there are not many cities in this country that are willing to say part of our job is to raise kids. Now, I don't like Charlie that well, but I mean, as far as the government goes, They said this, because he always picks on me, and I know if I didn't pick on him first, he would pick on me first. So that's the opening. But the city said, we have a responsibility. That is a tremendous breakthrough. The problem is we didn't know what to do with the breakthrough. And so by that time, my Rotary Club said, well, we'll give you some more money. And General Mills gave us some more money. And you have to create it. Have you ever had that responsibility? Yeah. And like I said, well, and fortunately, someone had given me this quote a number of years earlier, and I felt very good about it. And so I felt so good, I gave it to everybody in the school district, but I really didn't believe it, nor did I really understand what it meant. But now I am a living prophet of this. If there's anything I do believe, it's this, and I hope this is what you'll take home. The future is not a result of choices among alternative paths offered by the present, but a place that has to be created. Now, I know most of you don't believe that, because I didn't believe that. In other words, you probably said, well, I was in the right place at the right time, and I got the job. That's not true. And this is your life. And if you're not proactive, you know what ends up. And it first starts up here in your mind, and that's where it was with Wayne and Gil. And then in your will, because they wouldn't give up, because I didn't want to do this work. And then we had some activity, a group of people saying, well, maybe we could do something. The future then is not someplace we are going to, but one that we are creating. And what has happened to me, and I'm a living example, the paths are not to be found, but are to be made, and the activity of doing this work changes the maker and the destination. If you would have told, I asked Karen when I walked in this morning, can you even comprehend how I must feel at this conference? And she said, no. I can't even comprehend, because we started this work not having the foggiest notion in the world what we were doing. And now 42 states are represented in a couple of provinces. And she's really serious. They really do like it. But I've got a few more minutes. And so I called Peter up and I said, do you want to be part of this thing? He said, well. I said, well, this is it. I mean, this is the real test. He said, well, I just finished this research for Ruler and Brotherhood of why some kids make it and some kids don't. I got all this data, and nobody listens to it because it's just a bunch of numbers. And I said, well, how much will you charge? I can get some money. And so we hired this organization, and Shelby and Jean, that maybe some of you met, and Peter. We were meeting every week. And we didn't know where we were going. We had town meetings, we had focus groups, we collected data, and we're going to give you some material. And again, if I had time, but they won't give it to me, I would tell you more about it. That's 3 times I've said that now, haven't I?
You're spending a lot of time saying that.
Oh. For a year, we did all of this hard work by a lot of different people, and everybody was pumped up. And so the next fall, we had back-to-school workshop. We invited all the people that were engaged, including the staff, and we reported the survey results and all this other data that we had. In that afternoon, we broke the group into groups of 10 and said, so what are you going to do about it? One of the things you have to learn is to give it away. And so they had to decide what it is. And that's where I first met Dennis. Dennis was in the audience. He was a new minister in our town. And he called me up. We had breakfast. He invited me to talk to the ministers and the priests and the rabbis in our community. And they're a bunch of cheapskates, I'll tell you that. If you ever work with ministers, that's true. I've told this story throughout this whole country. I had to bring my own lunch. They said, we will serve coffee. And I remember how excited they were. They said, God, this is really good stuff. What should we do? And Dennis can confirm this. I said, I do not know. And it was one of the great salvations for me as I was ending my career. that nobody knew about, but maybe they did and didn't tell me, is I said, I don't know what you're supposed to do. And 3 months later, they called me back, and Dennis will talk about what they had produced. They knew what they had to do, and they got the spirit, and they have become what I call the sleeping giant. In all my years in education, I never worked with the faith community except to argue with them about Wednesday night activities, which was true. So you've all been through that too. But he could tell you stories the rest of the afternoon of the wonderful things that partner. And now we have the religious community on board. I was simply a catalyst that was telling the story around. And as we sat and said, now we got the business community, and we've got the city and the school district and the faith community. And I served on Mick's board at the foundation at the hospital, and I knew we should have them because they were a powerful group. So I went to see the president, Jim Renier, and convinced him to be part of the partner. And I've not ever been on a foundation of a hospital before either. And Mick will tell you, they have become an unbelievable. If I had time again, I would tell you some of that. But I know they would want to tell their own story of the power of each organization when they get the vision. I'll tell you a quick story about my Rotary Club because they have the vision. Just 2 weeks ago, I was at Rotary, and a gentleman, Steve, got up and said we're going to, because they mentor a bunch of high school kids, and that's another story, and he's going to take them to the hotel and have a nice luncheon for them and teach them etiquette. And then they wanted to take them to a musical performance that afternoon, but you need $800 to buy the tickets. And within 3 minutes, we raised $869. How do you do that? It's because they got the vision and the passion, and they said, if it's only money, money is never the problem. Now, I know you don't like to hear that, but I can tell you it is not the problem. The problem is the lack of vision or the lack of passion that goes with the vision and the ability to give it away and to believe that you can create the future, because Marion Wright Edelman is absolutely right. It has to become un-American for any child to grow up poor and educated and unloved. And so all of a sudden, the box is full of partners. So how did that happen? I just told you the story. It's that simple. And I've done this 3 times with this group, and I know they will confirm. That's it. That's how it happened. And they will tell you why. What I always ask people to do that I work with, okay, is your role as you leave here today and go back to wherever you are from is to tell the story. And when I have time, that's the 5th time I said that now, I always beg people to go home and to talk to one other person at least about what they have heard and what it is they're supposed to do. And being a very good teacher as well as a good superintendent, that must be getting through pretty soon, isn't it? This is how you do it. It's very simple. It's another quote from the founder of Head Start. It states that every child born in America gets on one of 2 trains. One train is bound for hell, and the other one is bound for heaven. And the problem is the kids on the wrong train see the kids on the right train. And what we have done in America is we have not built enough switching stations to get the kids off the wrong train on the right train. Because I ask all of you, as I ask every group I work with, have any of you had anything to do with being born into the situation you were born into? Any of you? I have yet to meet anyone that says, I think I had something to do with it. You don't. So then you have what Marion says, the obligation, not part-time but full-time, to say this is the work of our society if we are to sustain our society. And you can do big things or you can do little things. And I want to use a quote from the Minneapolis Star and Tribune by an editorial writer by the name of Jim Boyd, who I've never met. But the title of his editorial just caught me, and I had ever read his editorials to my knowledge. And it's called Every Kid in Every Village Needs a Vern Ryan. Vern Ryan was a mentor to Jim Boyd out in the state of Washington. And Vern Ryan died, and Jim Boyd forgot to tell him, thank you. So he wrote this wonderful long editorial, and I only take a couple of sentences out of it. Among the residents of that village out west, it was Vern Ryan, unloving but beautiful, who found something special in a wayward kid from a worrisome family. That was Jim Boyd. He took that young person under his wing and gave him some self-belief he didn't even know he needed. Every person in every village needs a Vern Ryan. There's a Vern Ryan, many of them, in your life and in my life. The problem is we have not thought about that. And that's what Marion is talking about. I will give one example because I have a number of them. But the earliest one in my life I can recall is Carl Jousted. I grew up in this little town in a little Lutheran church, and I wanted to go to Bible camp. And my mother, I grew up on welfare. My mother didn't have any money to send me, and she said, no, you can't go. And just a few weeks later, she said, I signed you up. And I said, well, how, if we don't have it. She said, no, Carl Jousted, it paid the $10. Carl Jousted sat in the back pew in my church every day, every Sunday that I remember. I never talked to him in my whole life, and he also has died. It's the same story as this one. And you need to think about that, because that's what Marion is actually talking about. How do you go about doing that kind of work? And so this thing has just gone gangbusters, and we've been together for a long period of time. Nobody that I work with seems to understand, and so I'm happy to be able to work with these people, and they can tell you their story of why they did this work and why they continue, and we have no idea where it's going to end. But their stories are so beautiful because they are the most beautiful people, and I can't say enough good about them, and I have stayed on time. Thank you.
She joins us. Hi, Liz.
Hi.
How are you today?
I'm doing fabulously. How are you?
Good, thanks. When was spring break for St. Louis Park?
Spring break is taking place this week.
Very good. I know my own nephews go to Minnetonka, and my nephew, who's a junior, is off with his parents looking at colleges in the East. He's a senior. He's, of course, looking for next year. So that's one way I'm sure some of your classmates are spending spring break.
Yep.
Tell us about what you're involved with over there at St. Louis Park.
Well, a group of us that were involved with what Mr. Johnson was speaking about, the Superintendent's Forum, decided that we wanted to put together a door-knocking campaign so that we could inform adults what we felt that we needed to be strong and successful people. So we are working on the last little bits of that to put into action in a couple weekends.
What have you found out that you've been passing along to adults in that regard? What kinds of things have you been talking about?
Well, we've been talking a lot about a mutual respect between adults and kids in the community and how to portray that respect, and also how important persistence is and how kids need adults to keep reminding them how important they are and how much they have to offer the community.
Liz, do your parents have cable at home?
They do.
Do they see the E! Channel and Wild on Spring Break and or MTV's Spring Break 2001? Have they seen any of those shows?
I don't think that they've seen them, but I'm sure that they're aware of what's going on.
Probably, it would probably be an educational lesson for all parents on the value of making the most of your spring break.
Absolutely.
All right. Mick, this is a nice program. I understand they're going to have a youth summit coming up in St. Louis Park as well.
That's correct, and Liz can speak more to that.
Liz, what about that?
Well, the Youth Summit is going to be on April 30th at the St. Louis Park City Hall, and what we're going to be doing is, or at least one of the things that we're going to be doing is we're going to have a panel of students, some of which were on the board for making the brochure, and we are going to discuss any questions or comments that anyone might have on the brochure and talk to them about it, and then they will be able to ask us more specifically about our own experiences or anything of that nature.
I hope you can both stay with us for just a couple of more moments.
You bet.
All right, very good. Liz and Mick. We have Liz Baxter from St. Louis Park. She's a senior. And Mick Johnson, who is president of the Park Nicollet Foundation. We'll talk more about making the most of spring break with the Rites of Passage program.